Hey guys, how are you today? This is Jim Prusak, physical therapist from the Pain PT, and today we're going to go over again the foundation of this work because I think it's really important to revisit what stress-induced illness or symptoms are versus structural ones, because we need the foundation to move forward with the treatment. Okay, just like we have a diagnosis, and once you have your diagnosis, we can move forward with the appropriate treatment. Now, stress is what causes pain. Stress is what causes illness. Stress is what causes somatic symptoms in the body. Now, the question is whether it's physical stress or emotional stress. And we need to rule that out right from the beginning to see what makes sense. Now, this is where people get misled because they believe that most conditions are caused by physical stress only. Now, it's reinforced by the medical establishment that is not trained in this, doesn't understand that emotional stress is equally as important in causing physical somatic complaints as physical stress is. Most healthcare practitioners are probably 100% thinking that most conditions are structural, are physical based, physical caused. And it's just not true. So we have to use logic here. We have to look at each person individually and look at their condition and their history, most importantly, to see what makes sense. Now, emotional stress works from your brain down through your nervous system into your body. Now, when we talk about stress, psychological stress, we are talking about emotions. You're talking about emotions. Psychological stress creates emotions from your amygdala, which is in your limbic brain. That part of your brain has direct connections through what's called your hypothalamus, which is the control center for your autonomic nervous system. And from that center, from your amygdala feeding your hypothalamus, messages are sent down in through what's called your autonomic nervous system. This is a peripheral nervous system that runs throughout your body, and it actually controls and has an effect on every single system in your body. And this is why you can see a whole host of different types of somatic symptoms that can be caused by emotional, psychological stress. Now, we have some foundational things we can look at that can be indicative of that. Some of these things are past history. Some of these things are anxiety. Some of these things are, we can screen for catastrophizing. We can screen for depression. We can screen for people who are highly sensitive people. We can screen for alexithymia. We can screen for some of these things that are indicative of a central nervous system driven condition. We also want to look at the history. What happened? What caused this? What was going on? Was it a clear-cut physical injury that you hurt yourself? Or did this thing just kind of start out? And you look at some of your history of stress, that there was a lot of additional stress at the time, then that most likely is the cause. Now, we have to come from this foundation. If you get a diagnosis of stress-induced illness, okay, you got to get that diagnosis and be clear about it, then your treatment going forward is not the same as a physical stress injury. It's not the same. Okay, and this is where people still get caught, partly because of their own beliefs and because they feel physical symptoms in their body. They just make that connection that it has to be physical. And two, because of the society and medical establishment that drives in these beliefs that everything is physical. But I want you guys to step back, look at your conditions, and see what makes sense. Now remember, emotional stress has the same chance to cause pain and other somatic symptoms as physical stress in your body. It just does. And you're trying to determine which of these things is the culprit. Now, with emotional stress, psychological stress, we want to focus on the emotions. Now, this is where everybody tends to get stuck or lose track, is when their symptoms, physical symptoms go up, their brains start thinking physical, not emotional. And part of the work I do with people is to get better and better, like an emotional detective, in building these brain networks to be able to go to your amygdala and your limbic brain directly and look at the emotions that may be generated in your brain that are now producing somatic symptoms in your body through your autonomic nervous system. So you need to go to the heart of the matter. And so I'm always asking people, let's move from your head to your heart. Let's move to the emotions. We need to move out of thinking. We need to move out of physical, thinking things are just physically induced or physically stressed. And look at these emotions. Okay, Dr. Sarno, one of the pioneers in this field, said we need to move from the physical to the psychological. And emotions are one of the last things I believe in our society that is not very well acknowledged, allowed, expressed, and cultivated. Okay, we just don't do this in our society starting at a young age. And the way we learn from our parents is we have a lot of emotional suppression, a lot of emotional repression, and combining that with certain personality types, people have a tendency for these emotions to not come out as emotions, but to come out through these different pathways. And we have more and more research coming out to prove this. And this is fascinating. It's also great because we have science now to say, yes, this is real. Now, there's been studies coming out showing that the amygdala, which is your centers of emotions, creates and causes physical symptoms in your body. The emotional center of the brain creates and causes physical symptoms in the body. They've also shown now that turning off this amygdala can profoundly turn off physical pain. They've done this in mice, and so they believe this is the same in humans, that they've been able to shut down a part of the amygdala, the central amygdala. The physical pain in the mice stopped, and the mice stopped gnawing and pawing and clawing after where they were hurting. It just stopped doing it. So when we're looking at emotions, the emotional center of the brain, as a driver, as a psychological driver of stress in your body, what we're trying to do is learn to get better and better as an emotional detective to see what are these underlying emotions that are causing these physical symptoms. And I want you guys to take it very simply here, and this is what I help people with to develop this capacity to affect label, is what we call it, is to get in touch with what is this emotion that's the undercurrent or the emotional flavor, or what is this emotion that's underneath or is causing this physical symptom. And you basically have three categories, because happiness and joy is not going to cause these symptoms. There's four primary emotions, and off these four primary emotions are many subsets of emotions. So the three primary emotions that could cause potential symptoms in you, the first one and the biggest one and the most common one is fear/anxiety. Anxiety is the biggest mental health issue around the world. Millions and millions of people have it. It's the most common one. It's underdiagnosed. And I believe anxiety is one of the biggest drivers of physical symptoms. There's hundreds and hundreds of physical symptoms you can have from just anxiety. And the cause is anxiety. It's nothing else, which is a version of fear. Okay, that's the most common one. Now, after that, the second one is anger, frustration, irritation, agitation, aggravation. Okay, this emotion is missed a lot, and a lot of people don't feel their anger because of various reasons. And what happens is, it's generated by your brain automatically as a reaction to something that you don't like. And whether you believe it or not, it's happening. Okay, so a lot of times we'll push it aside, or it's repressed. We don't even know we're generating anger, or we suppress it. So it has to come out in some way. So it goes again from your amygdala through your hypothalamus into your nervous system, comes out in your body as some type of symptom. Okay, again, we need to go upstream from your body to your brain and see, what is this? What is this? So we're trying to, what we call affect label, which is just simply acknowledge the emotion that I feel that is being generated. Okay, so anger is number 2. And number 3, again, there's only 3 categories, so you can be just looking at these 3, is sadness. The third one is sadness, despair, hopelessness, grief category. Okay, if you're feeling these types of feelings, they can also cause somatic symptoms. Now, we have research to show this, that all three of these emotions cause and can cause somatic symptoms in your body. It's been proven. Okay, what we need to do is to understand and realize and believe that yes, this is just as important as physical stress, if not more important, because like I said, emotions are neglected. Emotions are not put as a high priority in people. We put our priority on cognitive ability. Our whole lives are trained in school systems to train the cognitive part of our brain to think. The emotional part of our brain has been neglected. We're on our own. Either strategies have been developed from a young age, but society is not a society of allowing emotional expression. It's about emotional suppression or repression because of the consequences, because of our image, because of how we might be viewed. So we need to understand this. It's the last thing I believe in medicine that's not been linked up. It's not been studied well. I shouldn't say that not been studied well. It has been studied well. It needs more studies, but it's not been accepted into the medical establishment that your emotions, your psychological stress is equally as important in causing somatic symptoms. And again, what we're trying to do is set the foundation that what is causing this for you? My job as a physical therapist actually is to help you identify what is this cause. And then what I do and a lot of other mind-body practitioners do is work with you to learn to get in touch with your emotions more, to identify, acknowledge them like I mentioned, and also to be able to try to feel them more as emotions and to stay with emotions. Okay, not to go to physical symptoms, but to go upstream to your brain, to the cause of the symptom. Remember, the symptom is a symptom. It's not the cause. So you don't want to focus on your physical symptoms when the cause is something else. All right, guys, reach out with questions. Or comments. I really wanted to drive this home because a lot of people still getting tricked. I see it all the time, even people I work with, where this emotional piece is not front and center. They're doing other pieces of the puzzle. They're relaxing, they're talking to their brain, but the emotional piece, I see it in a lot of patients, a lot of people, is still being neglected. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.